Why are Muslims and Christians portrayed as enemies? A story of power, fear, and inherited hatred. Two people walk down the same street. They breathe the same air. They pray to the same God. Yet the world insists they are enemies. One is Muslim, the other is Christian. And before either of them speaks, history has already spoken for them. But here is the uncomfortable truth. This hatred did not begin in heaven. It was engineered on earth. And once you see how it was built, you cannot unsee it. At first glance, Islam and Christianity appear divided by belief. But when you look closer, the distance collapses. Both worship the God of Abraham. Both revere Moses. Both honor David. Both speak of Jesus. The Quran speaks of Jesus with reverence. The Gospel speaks of mercy, humility, and love. There is no command to hate the other, no divine order to destroy the neighbor. So why does blood stain their shared history? Because faith was never the real battlefield. Power was. To understand this, we must return to a world drowning in fear. Medieval Europe was collapsing under disease, famine, and political chaos. Kings were weak. The church was losing control. And when authority begins to crack, it looks for an enemy. So a story was told. The Holy Lands have been taken. God demands action. Salvation lies in war. The masses did not question it. Fear silences doubt. Thus began the Crusades, not as a war of faith, but as a campaign of conquest dressed in religious language. Cities burned. Entire populations were slaughtered. Jerusalem ran red with blood. And none of it was written by God. But something more dangerous than swords was forged that day. A memory. A story passed down through generations. A story of us versus them. Yet history is never as clean as the victors claim. While Europe was tearing itself apart in the name of purity, something remarkable was happening elsewhere. In Al-Andalus, Muslim-ruled Spain, Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived side by side. Churches stood near mosques. Synagogues stood beside both. Science flourished. Medicine advanced. Philosophy crossed religious lines. This reality does not fit the myth, so it was buried. Because peaceful coexistence threatens those who profit from division. Centuries later, a new fear rose: the Ottoman Empire. Not just a Muslim state, but a disciplined, expanding power. Europe did not see an empire. It saw a nightmare. And once again, politics wore the mask of religion. The message was simple, dangerous, effective. Islam is coming. From that moment on, Muslim identity became synonymous with threat. Not because of belief, but because of power. Time passed, empires fell, borders shifted, but the narrative survived. It evolved. Today, there are no crusader armies, but there are headlines. A crime committed by a Muslim becomes a religious act. The same crime by a Christian becomes an individual tragedy. Words matter, and repetition creates truth, or at least the illusion of it. Fear is no longer spread by swords. It is spread by screens. And fear, once planted, grows obedient populations. So let us ask the question few dare to ask. Are ordinary Muslims and Christians enemies? The neighbors? The co-workers? The families trying to survive the same economic collapse, the same wars, the same grief? Or is the real enemy something else? A system that feeds on division? A politics that requires fear? An industry that profits from endless conflict? History does not show us religious war. It shows us religious language used to justify human ambition. Hatred, after all, is not inherited genetically. It is taught, repeated, reinforced. Most people defend hatreds they did not choose, only absorbed. And perhaps the most dangerous lie ever told is this: you hate because you believe. In reality, many believe because they were taught to hate. So here is the final question. Not who is right, not whose God is true, not which scripture carries more authority, or which prayer is spoken in the correct language, but who benefits when two people kneeling toward heaven are taught to see each other as threats instead of reflections? Who gains when shared values are buried beneath inherited fear, when compassion is replaced by suspicion, and history is edited into a weapon? Because once fear replaces thought, control becomes easy. Questions disappear. Obedience feels like safety. And peace, real peace, becomes dangerous. Peace threatens systems built on division. Peace weakens narratives that require enemies to survive. Peace exposes how fragile hatred truly is when stripped of its myths. Maybe Muslims and Christians are not ancient enemies. Maybe they are ancient neighbors, separated not by God, but by those who learned how profitable separation could be. Maybe wars were never about faith, but about power wearing faith as a costume. Maybe God was invoked not as a guide, but as an excuse. And maybe what we call religious conflict is often just human fear given a sacred name. What if the real heresy was never believing differently, but refusing to see the humanity standing across from you? What if the greatest threat to those who rule through division is not rebellion with weapons, but unity with understanding? And maybe the greatest act of rebellion, the most radical, unsettling act of all, is simply refusing to inherit a hatred you never chose. Refusing to hate strangers for stories written before you were born. Refusing to confuse tradition with truth. Refusing to believe that God requires enemies to be worshipped correctly. Because perhaps God was never divided. Perhaps only people were. Is Islam being misrepresented? Nearly 2 billion people in the world follow the same faith. Yet when the world looks at that faith, does everyone see the same thing? To some, Islam means violence. To others, oppression. To some, backwardness. But to others, justice, mercy, and surrender. So the question is not simple. Is Islam really what we are shown, or are we only seeing a shadow? The gap between image and reality. You open the news, an explosion, an attack, a tragedy, and almost instantly the same word appears, Islamic. But no one stops to ask, does this person truly represent Islam? Or are they merely using its name? Because in the modern world, one truth remains. An image is more powerful than 1,000 books, and when that image is repeated, again and again, it becomes reality in the mind. But is this reality? Or is it a carefully selected scene? How it began and how it changed, Islam emerged with a single command: read. A religion that began by demanding knowledge. It gave women inheritance rights, protected orphans, restricted slavery, condemned exploitation, placed justice at its core. Yet today, people ask, why did this religion fall behind? Perhaps the real question is different. Did the religion change? Or did the people carrying it change? History tells us something rarely mentioned. Islamic civilization was once a center of science, medicine, philosophy, and reason. So why are these pages missing from the story we hear today? Who does the media show us? In global media, how is a Muslim usually portrayed? Angry, silent, dangerous, foreign. Yet millions of Muslims are working, studying, raising families, hurting no one. Why are they invisible? Because fear sells. Fear attracts attention. Fear is easy to control. And that raises a dangerous question. If Islam is constantly portrayed as a threat, who benefits? Religion or culture? Oppression happens in a country, and instantly the blame falls on religion. But few ask, is this Islam, or culture, or politics hiding behind faith? Religion is often used as a shield. When people act unjustly, they blame God, and the world judges the faith, not the misuse of it. Are Muslims also part of the problem? Yes, and this is the hardest truth, because Islam is not only misrepresented from the outside, but also from within. Those who justify violence, those who silence questions, those who forget mercy, they read the same book, but do they hear the same message? Perhaps the problem is this: Islam is being spoken, but not lived. Is asking questions a threat? In many places, questioning Islam feels dangerous. Yet the Quran repeatedly asks, do you not think? Do you not reflect? Do you not reason? So why has curiosity become rebellion? Perhaps true faith is not born from fear, but from understanding. The final question, is Islam being misrepresented? Maybe yes, maybe no. But one thing is certain: what we are shown is never the full story. And perhaps the real issue is this: people judge a religion long before they understand it. Maybe Islam is not a threat. Maybe it is simply a story told poorly. And maybe the first step toward truth is listening. Because sometimes what we fear most is what we understand the least.